Hello, family, and welcome to another episode of Role Model Experts Cafe. I'm your host, Dr. L, the Parent Whisperer, and I have with me an amazing lady, Miss Judith McLean. I hope I said that right, Judith. Am I
Yes,
correct?
you did.
Very
Yes,
good.
thank you.
Judith is somebody that has been part of our community that supports families and experts. And I'm very fascinated. And I thought that it's important for you guys to meet her and learn more about what she does. So thank you for tuning in. And Judith, thank you for taking time out of your busy day to be here with us today. Can you tell us a little bit more about your background and how you got involved in doing what you do and your story?
Thank you for this opportunity. I think it all started when I went through counseling. And after I finished a bit of therapy, I got introduced to Family Services of Greater Vancouver. And I actually ended up teaching a course for them. This is way before I went to university. It was called For Women Who Love Too Much. And the AKA of that was also known as For Women Who Feared Being Abandoned.
Mm.
That was the beginning of my career way back in the 1980 kind of time. And I had an opportunity to work for a psychiatrist and psychologist who specialized in trauma and abuse. They actually helped close down a facility where there's a lot of abuse going on between generations of people. And I was starting to realize that things that we were sharing and reporting on was part of my background. So my psychiatrist boss said, Judith, I think you need to see a counselor. So I had an amazing woman counselor who took me through how to deal with a very dysfunctional family and gave me hope that I could go to university, I could add to helping other people kind of thing. So the good news was, after a couple of courses at university, my boss said to me, we're going to change our schedule here so you can go to school in the daytime. I'd
Mm.
always just done night school. And I didn't think I was university material because I was working class. I had really low educated parents. There was no education was seen as something that was kind of forbidden, right? I mean, welcome to the dark ages, right? In
Wow.
my household. So I took women's studies as my first course. And I learned about the oppression of my mom. And I learned about why she behaved the way she did. So going to university, by the way, there was a lot of sexism and crazy behavior going on when I was there. I actually tried to get one professor fired because he was such a sexist, homophobic pig. And he was teaching psychology of all things. Well, I sent my letter off to the president because I was a little champion of protecting those younger than me. And that didn't get anywhere because he had tenure. But what I decided at the time, we all need a voice. We need someone to look out for ourselves. So that was the beginning of learning about advocacy. And I flipped from psychology major into social work and learned about working on justice issues. So worked in the downtown east side of Vancouver, which is currently a horror show of sad situations. But occasionally, because of the college I work at part-time, we get students from that area and other vulnerable people. And my role is to introduce them that it's safe at the college. And so I break down barriers. I've been known as the barrier breaker. And I love that title because then some of my students go on and also become barrier breakers and kick-ass kind of gals, right? A lot of men come through as well. Most of my students that are gay came out in my class because they felt safe there. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm big on education because it made a difference. I've had a more comfortable lifestyle because I got post-secondary. But what I'm realizing now is a lot of people don't believe they can go to college or university. In Canada, there's so many free courses, but not all classes are safe to be in. There's a lot of bad behavior, uncivil behavior. So I've decided in my own business to put courses together that are accessible for young, middle age, any age can go back to school. I'm over 65. I found out you can take courses at UBC for free. All you have to do is pay for the books and then you can sell them back, right? If you want your money back, kind of thing. So I'm a big champion of post-secondary, but it's got to make sense for people. And so I offer college kinds of courses, but accessible whatever time people are available. Right now, I'm coaching and mentoring a domestic abuse survivor. And I've coached her because she wants to be a trainer. She thinks that what I'm doing is pretty cool. And so she got A's in 2 of her first courses, first woman in her family to be in post-secondary. So I teach courses like how to be kind, how to forgive people, manage anger. But the course I'm really excited about now that I'm hoping more people will get into is critical thinking. I didn't use a lot of my left brain in university because I was all about recovery and therapy and making it safe for people. But I'm now in a relationship with an engineer who is so left brain. And it's wonderful. We put our brains together and we have a marvelous, comfortable life now.
Right.
And I've seen the other side and I'm happy there.
Literally the other side. That's awesome.
Gone to the far side.
Judith, thank you so much for sharing your personal experience and your journey. It is really amazing. Usually I don't mention these during our interviews, but basically I think this needs to be mentioned. I was up till 5 o'clock in the morning last night, and I was running this presentation that I hope to give someday on a global stage about girls leadership and the what needs to happen. And my primary area that I was focused on was Central Asia and Middle East. And basically what needs to happen for their voices to be seen and heard at the family level, at the community level, and also at the institution and government level where it can bring about social change, to eliminate things like sexism that you were saying, to eliminate these kind of oppressions. And you mentioned education. Education is one of those features, education, finance. These are all tools by which you can basically empower somebody or oppress them, right? So why we have the other half of the population using these tools against, because it doesn't serve humanity as a whole when we oppress 50% of our species, basically. So I totally resonate with that. And I was up till 5 o'clock in the morning, not knowing why this dialogue is running in my head. Let alone just to realize that earlier today I had a meeting with someone that has worked with the United Nations, and I met her and we were talking about Women's Federation Council, and now here you are talking about this. So now I understand why I was up till 5 in the morning. But going back to what you were talking about with critical thinking, this is something that is concerning me, and that's what part of the reason why we have this interview today, is because more and more we see that because the children are being nurtured and babysit in helicopter parenting, they never get to use that part of their brain that makes them responsible for their consequences, problem solve out of situations that they did not foresee. And as a result, by the time they get to, for the first time on their own, be able to exercise critical thinking, problem solving, and recognizing risk assessment and all of that, ends up being in their college or high school years, when now they have cars, now they are being exposed to drugs and alcohol and all these other things that now there is no supervision on, which is a nightmare, basically. And nowadays we have the virtual world on top of that. So tell me, I mean, I understand that this is an important point, but what are some of the consequences? What are some of the challenges that you're seeing with the people that you interact with, both women as well as the younger generation?
Well, I'll give you an example. One of my classes had, we had a lot of foreign students that would be really qualified in super jobs from the countries of origin. They come to Canada and can't get work in their field, so they take lesser jobs. But there's a culture of obedience, and or a background from an authoritarian country, I would actually have to teach them that they were susceptible to being underpaid or not paid or exploited or taken advantage of. And the problem is, a lot of the people that are taking advantage of them, a lot of our culture is about movies that take advantage of people. I mean, a lot of movies aren't very exciting and don't sell a lot of commercial product if it's about assertiveness, right? And so we have people believing that that's the way it is and it won't change. And so the last class we had of domestic assault, a cohort, we were giving people tools to become tradespeople and to find mentors that would protect them properly, kind of thing. To give a woman a job in construction 20 years ago was setting her up for a problem. But now men who are evolved and they have mothers that train them well, they're gentlemen, they're different kind of men than the ones I grew up with. It's safe for girls now to be in those some construction sites, but I have to teach them how to read those sites, how to look for danger, how to read between the lines when there's other women that are harassed and putting up with it because they need the paycheck. Mm-hmm. What people do for a paycheck is abysmal, and it's almost like mental torture.
Right. It seems like, again, so we talked about education. Now here is finance, basically, or access to resources. Technology in some countries is another one of those tools. And then, of course, access to civil services, laws, and privileges and rights that, any human being should have, all become tools. So, all right. So we're focusing on some of these things that have been with us for generations, if not the entire history of humans. What are some of the things that you have seen work? Like, what would be 1 or 2 tips for people who are finding themselves in that situation to kind of start moving in the right direction that you have for our audience members?
Well, I think the toughest thing that works in my class is my alerting them to how they contribute to the problem by their naivety, by not paying attention to signals, to being too trusting, because I'm safe, but other situations may not be. So I have to teach them to take and to read between the lines. A lot of people just accept things holus bolus instead of figuring out what's the angle here? Where are these people coming from? And I'm a survivor because I had to figure those things out just for self-protection, because my mother was raised by a very abusive alcoholic. And I'm a strong believer that we do inherit the trauma of our grandparents and parents and all those kinds of situations. And so I'm hypersensitive to things. And so I try not to lay that on people. But again, if people aren't doing well and are always either losing their jobs or not set up for promotions, not taking advantage of situations, I have to teach them that they deserve those things. They have to forgive whatever went south and move forward. So the biggest lesson is I give them hope and a clean slate. Right. I was raised by a dad who never forgave anything. And he even kept records, like a bookkeeper, of all the faults of the hockey players that he followed.
Okay, so let me, because you're an expert and you just mentioned some really key points there. So I want to briefly recap it because each of them is important in its own right. The first one was the fact that when you take control of the situation by making it your case instead of somebody else's fault, that is the first part of empowerment, to accepting ownership of the situation. So that was one of the things, that accepting that. The second part is the forgiveness part, that being able to forgive yourself, being able to forgive others, again, put you in control of the situation. You're the one forgiving despite what has happened, basically. And the third one that you just mentioned was hope and the opportunity for a clean slate that you can always have and you can always step up from and move forward with. This is very important, and we kind of went through it. Each of those could be a lifetime lesson. I totally get that.
Well, one author that influenced me was Martin Seligman, And he wrote a book many years ago, before it became really popular, on how to raise optimism in children.
Mhm.
And the whole point was, if you have two pessimistic parents, it's likely that child will be pessimistic and high anxiety in the
Right.
classroom,
Right.
particularly if they're perfectionists, which is really a hard mantle to carry.
Right.
I've had many of those in my class that I've had to help unravel that requirement. But to give people a chance to say, this isn't forever, it's just temporary, and it's not your fault, and just wake up next day, and it's safe. And that's the other thing I love about my partner. He has a clean slate every day.
Mhm.
He's from Scottish background and amazing moral courage. And he, as an elder gentleman, he's still very involved in the community, giving back. He has a higher toleration for screw ups than I do. So I watch him as he forgives and moves on. And so more men need to, and boys need to see that in action, what it looks like, so that they don't have to have a vengeance routine
Right.
with their pals.
Actually, you just brought up a really important point. That's the role model for the next generation, right? So if you, and for most of us, we don't know what we don't know, right? So if you're raised in a family and it's a certain way, you assume that all families are that way. So you don't notice necessarily that the dysfunction is truly a dysfunction. And the trouble is that when you now live that dysfunction in your now current family, you are role modeling this dysfunctional behavior for the next generation, for your kids. So if you are used to surviving, then guess what? You're still surviving and you're teaching your kids to survive. And there's nothing wrong with that. But success in thrive versus success and survive are completely different things. And we want to teach our kids how to thrive, not just merely survive, right? Yeah.
And
So,
I'm a byproduct of the thriving, because all of the folks that went ahead of me, because of all of the circumstances of poverty and depression and war and injuries and post-traumatic stress, nobody even thought about that. My
right.
mother's favorite line: "We'll never air our dirty laundry anywhere outside this house." I said, "Mom, there's too much dirty laundry, and we're not the only ones." And she wouldn't brook that, right?
Yeah.
So, and my mom was not a career person. Women were kept hidden in the home, right?
Right.
And I just went to India. We had an opportunity to go to a wedding in India, and I saw the same layers of women have no voice. They just, the man to man, right? It's always man to man talking. I had a question, he wouldn't answer me, answer the man, kind of
Right.
thing. And I'm going, Lordy doodle, how do I work? Now I understand my South Asian students in my class who are so obedient and polite, right? I go, no, but I have to remember, they're living biculturally.
Right.
What goes on at home and what goes on at work,
Right.
right?
Absolutely.
And so to deal with, like, so when you ask, what do I bring to the table? An awareness of racism, an awareness of the sexism, and understanding when is the right time to become a political champion, and
Right.
maybe have somebody else do it if you're early in your career.
Right.
And if you're later in your career, then you can take more risks.
And,
Right?
and it really doesn't matter whether you're male or female or what ethnicity or background you have. You are either part of perpetuating the situation or taking an active approach in changing it for the next generation, basically. And our hope is that parents take an active role in eliminating these things, because they are the first teachers of the next generation. They are the first superheroes for their kids. And they can truly change, radically change human history within one generation, eliminating all of those problems.
I've seen that with a few women that I've met in my career. Actually, my very best friend, but she was teaching parenting classes back in the 70s. Whatever age her kids were at, those are the parents that she was teaching. Sadly, she died too soon, but she was my role model. Like, she was the person who gave children strength to become all that they could, right? Yeah. Yeah.
All right, Judith, I know that we definitely agree on this, and we have a mission as far as supporting families and supporting and optimizing the next generation. But given all the different things that you're doing, how can people find out more about you and connect with you and start engaging with your mission as well?
Well, I have kind of two personas. LinkedIn is more about my professional kind of thing. And the topics that I cover in LinkedIn are usually around safety in the workplace, psychological safety, and figuring out how you fit in well, around productivity. So anybody that's in a family that's stressed out and doesn't know how to manage odd behavior in the workplace, that's a good site.
Okay.
In terms of what I do for a living, and my articles are around personal development, are in my high Q training. High Q represents IQ, EQ, CQ for courage quotient. So I want more people to have more courage to step up and protect themselves, but protect others that haven't found their voice yet.
Absolutely. I
So
love the
highqtraining.ca. Yeah.
I love the multi-prong approach, and I'll be sure to put those links in the description box of this video. Judith, thank you so much for taking time and discussing these. These are all important points, both on a community and global scale, as well as on the personal and family circle, basically. So I really appreciate your perseverance in doing what you do and connecting with people that really need this help. For our audience members, please make sure that you role model the behavior, that it is okay to reach out for help. It is okay to reach out for resources by going to the description box and clicking on the links that Judith has provided so that you can connect with her. You can find communities that can support you in your missions, in your passions, and what you want to accomplish for yourself as well as for your family. And before we finish, Judith, any final words for our audience members?
Two things. You don't have to do it alone. And your site, Dr. L, is a mecca of hope. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Guys, if you haven't already done so, please make sure you click subscribe so you get notified of experts like Judith that come on the channel, share their expertise and gifts with us. And so you get notified of those. We look forward to seeing you on future episodes. And Judith, I look forward to further collaborations in our community. Cheers.
Thank you. Bye-bye.